I had owned the land for 2 days. That was it. 2 quiet nights, 2 mornings of standing still and telling myself I had finally done it, finally found a place where no one could tell me what to do. On the 3rd morning, I drove back out expecting silence. Instead, I found movement. Before I even shut off the engine, I saw a drone lift into the air, its sharp buzz slicing through the open space. Another followed it, then another, floating low and slow like insects mapping a body. On the ground, a full crew was already spread out across the property. Measuring wheels rolled through the dirt. Survey stakes were being hammered in. Someone had a tripod set up with instruments pointed straight at my land. A folding table stood near the road, stacked with thick binders and loose maps that flapped in the wind. They were working like they had been there all morning, like they belonged there. No one looked at me. No one paused. No one asked who I was. I stepped out of the truck, the gravel crunching loudly under my boots, expecting at least one head to turn. Nothing. A man walked past me carrying equipment close enough that I could have reached out and touched him, and didn't even slow down. For a second, I wondered if I had taken a wrong turn, if I was standing on someone else's land. But I wasn't. This was mine. I walked toward the nearest person who looked official: clipboard, radio, reflective vest, and asked, calmly at first, "Hey, who authorized this?" He didn't answer. Didn't even acknowledge the question. He adjusted his gloves and kept writing like I was background noise. I tried again, louder. "This is private property." "Who gave you permission to be here?" Still nothing. Around me, the work continued. Stakes went into the soil. A drone dipped lower, scanning. Pages turned. Pens scratched. It felt deliberate, not confusion, not a mistake, but something colder. Standing there, ignored on my own land, a tight pressure settled in my chest. Not fear, not anger yet. Violation. The kind that hits before you even understand what's happening. And that was the moment I knew. This wasn't an accident. I didn't come here looking for trouble. I came here because I was tired of noise, of people, of rules that never seemed to apply equally, of living in places where someone was always watching, always measuring, always telling you where you didn't belong. For years, I had dreamed of owning land that answered to no one but the law and the seasons. A place where morning meant wind instead of traffic, and decisions were made with your own 2 hands. When this property came up for sale, it felt almost unreal. The previous owner had been living overseas for years, barely involved, the land left untouched and forgotten while life pulled him farther away. No buildings, no community, no strings that I could see, just open ground and the promise of quiet. I did what I was supposed to do. I checked the records. I signed the papers. I waited for everything to clear. When the deed finally came through, it felt heavier than paper, like something earned. 2 days earlier, I had stood in the middle of the land and let the silence settle in, letting myself believe that this was the start of something simpler. I wasn't naive. I understood ownership came with responsibility. Taxes, boundaries, rules that made sense. I wasn't running from the law. I trusted it. What I didn't expect was to be treated like an intruder before I'd even unpacked my tools. Standing there now, watching strangers move across my property with confidence and authority, I felt that quiet dream slipping. This land wasn't just dirt to me. It was distance from the life I was trying to leave behind. It was proof that starting over was still possible, and I hadn't even had time to settle into it. Inside, a single thought kept repeating, steady and unresolved. I came here for silence, not for this. I walked closer, slow and deliberate, making sure there was no doubt I belonged where I was standing. The man with the clipboard was still there, still writing, as if I didn't exist. I stopped directly in front of him, close enough that he had to see my boots in his line of sight. "Sir," I said, keeping my voice level, "this is my property. I need to know who authorized this work." He finally looked up, just for a second. No apology, no explanation. His eyes slid past me, then dropped back to the paper. He turned slightly, angling his body away like I was an inconvenience, and continued marking measurements. I felt something tighten in my jaw. "Excuse me," I said, louder now. "You're on private land." Still nothing. Around us, the operation moved like a machine. Someone shouted coordinates. Another man planted a stake a few yards away. The drones adjusted their path, dipping lower, tracking lines that cut across ground I had walked only days earlier. Every movement felt rehearsed, confident, untouchable. I stepped away from the officer and headed toward a woman standing near the folding table. She was dressed clean and sharp, tablet in one hand, phone in the other, watching everything without participating. The way people moved around her made it clear who was in charge. "Are you responsible for this?" I asked. She looked at me slowly, deliberately, like she was deciding how much effort I was worth. Then she gave a thin, polite smile that never reached her eyes. "You need to step back," she said. "You're interfering with HOA operations." I stared at her. "HOA operations on my land?" She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "The front portion of this property and the access road fall under HOA control. We are conducting authorized assessments." "Authorized by who?" I asked. "Because no one asked me. No one notified me. And I own this land." Her smile tightened. "You will be provided the relevant records once our review is complete." "That's not how this works," I said. "You don't just walk onto someone's property and—" She cut me off, her tone suddenly colder. "Do not interfere with our work." The words landed hard. I took a breath. "You're treating me like I don't belong here." She looked past me, signaling to someone behind the table. "Please note the disruption," she said calmly, as if I weren't standing right there. Disruption. I felt the balance shift in that moment. It wasn't just that they refused to explain, it was that they had already decided who I was. Not an owner, not someone to answer to. Just an obstacle. I gestured around us. "You're setting stakes, flying drones, bringing equipment onto my land without permission. If you think you have authority here, you need to say it out loud." Her eyes finally met mine, sharp and unblinking. "You are not authorized to question HOA procedures." "That's my land," I said again, slower this time. "And until further notice," she replied, "you are interfering with HOA business." Behind her, the work never stopped. No one looked up. No one paused. They didn't need to. The message was clear. This wasn't a conversation. It was a takeover. I stood there for a long moment, surrounded by people acting like I was the trespasser, and realized arguing now would give them exactly what they wanted. So I said nothing. I stepped back, watched them work, and let them believe they had won something. Because power, when it's this confident, always leaves a trail. They came back the next day. This time, it wasn't just clipboards and equipment. 2 dark sedans pulled up near the road, doors opening in sequence, polished shoes hitting the dirt like it offended them. The tone shifted the moment I saw the briefcases. This wasn't about surveying anymore. This was about pressure. 3 of them walked toward me together. The same HOA representative led, flanked by 2 men in suits who looked out of place against the open land. One of them carried a thick folder, the kind meant to look heavy even before it's opened. "We've completed a preliminary review," the woman said, stopping just short of my personal space. "And we need to clarify ownership boundaries." One of the men stepped forward and opened the folder, flipping it so I could see highlighted pages, maps marked with aggressive red lines. "According to these records," he said, tapping the paper, 20 acres of this property fall under HOA jurisdiction. That includes the access road. I looked past him, down the road I had driven in on, the only way in or out. My stomach dropped. "That's impossible," I said quietly. The second man adjusted his tie. "It's not a matter of opinion." The woman folded her arms. "You're currently occupying land that is not fully yours." I felt the weight of the words settle. Occupying. Like I was temporary. Like I didn't belong. What exactly are you saying? I asked. She didn't hesitate. You have two options. The man with the folder raised two fingers. Option 1. You resolve this immediately. You pay $18,000 to cover past use, assessments, and administrative costs. Once paid, access remains open and the matter is closed. And option 2, I asked, though I already felt the answer coming. You enter into a rental agreement with the HOA for the disputed land and road, the woman said. Monthly terms, controlled access, full compliance. I waited, expecting her to finish. She did. If neither option is selected, the HOA will restrict access to the road. I stared at her. You'll block it? Yes, she replied calmly. Within 48 hours. 2 days. I felt heat rise behind my eyes, a mix of disbelief and something sharper. I hadn't even settled in. I hadn't built anything. I hadn't disturbed anyone. And suddenly I was being told my land came with a countdown. This doesn't make sense, I said. You can't just... She cut me off again. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, enforcement begins. The men closed the folder in unison, the sound loud in the open air. I stood there, silent now, overwhelmed by how fast it had escalated. The land around us hadn't changed, but the ground felt less solid under my feet. I watched them walk away, already confident, already certain I would fold, and for the first time since I bought the land, I realized how alone I was standing there. They thought I was weak because I didn't argue, because I didn't raise my voice, because I stood there and let them finish talking. That night, I didn't sleep much. I spread every document I had across the table. The deed, the purchase agreement, the survey that came with the sale. I read slowly, carefully, the way you do when you're looking for something specific but don't yet know what it is. Then I went deeper. County records, archived plats, zoning histories that most people never bother to open because they assume someone else already did. That assumption was the mistake they were counting on. Buried in the older files, yellowed and scanned from paper older than anyone who had spoken to me that day, I found the truth. The original deed. Recorded cleanly and unmistakably in 2T6D7. Long before anyone had ever dreamed of building a gated community or inventing bylaws to control it. The boundaries were clear. The land designation was clear. Agricultural, protected, and continuous. There was no gap. No ambiguity. No handoff. The HOA didn't just lack authority, they didn't even exist when this land was defined. I followed the timeline forward, mapping their creation against the property's history. Every claim they had made unraveled quietly, line by line. The access road they threatened to block wasn't theirs. The acres they claimed had never been transferred, leased, or recorded under any association. What they had relied on wasn't law. It was intimidation. I sat back and closed the files, feeling something settle inside me. Not relief, not satisfaction, but clarity. They had mistaken silence for surrender. They thought pressure would make me fold. Instead, they had given me time. And time, backed by truth, is dangerous when you underestimate the person using it. They came back louder this time. No surveys, no drones. Just voices raised before they even reached me. The HOA representative was already talking as she crossed the dirt, her words sharp, rehearsed, meant to be heard. 2 other board members followed close behind, their faces set with the kind of confidence people wear when they believe the system is on their side. "You've ignored our deadline," she said. "And you're continuing to occupy restricted land." I didn't move. "This is my property," she scoffed. "We've already explained that to you. You explained your version," I said calmly. "Now you can leave." Her expression hardened. "You don't have that authority." I took a breath, steadying myself. "I do. And I'm asking you to step off my land." She laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "Call it in," she said to someone behind her. A phone came out immediately. I watched her turn away slightly, heard the practiced tone slip into place. Yes, this is the Meadowbrook HOA. We have a non-compliant individual refusing to vacate disputed property. He's obstructing HOA operations. She glanced back at me as she spoke, like she was daring me to react. I didn't. 15 minutes later, a patrol car rolled in, dust rising behind it. Then, another. The officer stepped out, hands resting casually near their belts, eyes already scanning the scene. "What seems to be the problem?" one of them asked. The HOA representative moved fast. She launched into her story, pulling out folders, pointing at the land, gesturing toward me like I was an exhibit. "He's been aggressive. He's refusing to comply. These are our documents." The officer took the papers, flipping through them slowly. "And you, sir?" he asked, turning to me. "I'd like to show you something," I said, reaching into my truck. The HOA rep snapped, "He's trying to delay." The officer raised a hand. "Let him speak." I laid my documents out on the hood. The original deed, the county records, the survey dated decades earlier. I didn't explain much. I didn't need to. The officer compared pages, eyes moving back and forth. His posture shifted. He called the other officer over. "These dates," he said quietly. "Take a look." They stepped aside, murmuring. The HOA representative's voice sharpened. "Those documents are outdated. Our authority is current." The officer turned back. "Ma'am, your HOA was formed in the early 2000s. This deed was recorded in 1967. She hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. "That doesn't change our jurisdiction," she said quickly. "It does," the officer replied. "Completely." The second officer looked at her. "This land predates your association. You don't have enforcement authority here." Silence fell, heavy and sudden. "So," the first officer continued, "calling 911 to pressure a property owner with disputed claims, especially after being told to leave, can be considered harassment." The HOA representative's tone changed instantly. Softer. "Careful. We weren't aware of that detail." The officer didn't buy it. "You are now." He looked at her directly. "If you return to this property and attempt to enforce fines, block access, or misrepresent authority again, you could be facing charges. Fraud, harassment." Her mouth opened, then closed. The officers turned to me. "You're within your rights. If they come back, call us." As the patrol cars pulled away, the HOA group stood frozen, their confidence gone. They gathered their folders without looking at me, their earlier certainty drained out in real time. They had come expecting submission. Instead, they had just been warned. And I could see it in their faces. They weren't done. They were embarrassed. They didn't come back with police after that. They came back with paper. The first notice appeared taped to a post near the road, bright and deliberate, positioned so anyone passing could see it. "Unauthorized presence, $350. According to the HOA, I had been observed occupying a restricted operational zone during one of their prior assessments. No explanation. No hearing, just a deadline. I paid it, not because I agreed, but because I wanted to see what they would do next." The second fine came 3 days later. This one was handed to me directly in front of two workers who suddenly found reasons to linger nearby. Interference with inspection, $275. The explanation was almost insulting. I had asked questions. I had made their staff uncomfortable. I read it, folded it once, and paid that one too. My silence confused them. I could see it in their faces. They expected shouting, threats, pushback. Instead, I gave them compliance without submission, and they mistook it for weakness. That's when the tone changed. The third fine wasn't about money at all. It was about embarrassment. Community disruption, $425, printed in bold, posted publicly. The language was vague enough to mean anything and specific enough to sting. It implied I was a problem, a nuisance, someone who didn't belong. One of them said casually, If you'd just cooperate, these things wouldn't keep happening. Another added without looking at me, HOA rules apply whether you like them or not. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. That was the mistake they made. They thought the fines were working. They thought the pressure was pushing me out, inch by inch. They started treating me like a lesson, something to be corrected publicly so others wouldn't get ideas. What they didn't understand was that I wasn't paying to make it stop. I was paying to let it continue. Every fine gave me a clearer pattern. Every accusation showed me how careless they were becoming. They weren't trying to be right anymore. They were trying to be dominant. And dominance, when it replaces legality, always gets sloppy. They believed my silence meant surrender. In reality, it meant I was done reacting and had started watching. They didn't ease into it. They stormed in. This time, the HOA showed up angry. No clipboards, no polite distance, no fake professionalism. The representative led the charge, her face already tight with contempt, her voice rising before she stopped walking. "You've gone too far," she snapped. "Now you're damaging community property." I looked past her and saw it, the wall along the roadside. Broken, chipped inward, stones scattered like debris after an impact. "That wasn't there yesterday," I said. She cut me off. "Your heavy truck did that." "That truck hasn't moved." She stepped closer, too close. "Don't lie to me. We have witnesses." "Who?" I asked. "You," she said sharply. "People like you always pretend they don't know the rules." Something in her tone shifted from authority to insult. "You're uneducated," she continued, louder now, making sure anyone within earshot could hear. "Rude. You buy land and think it makes you important. This is exactly why people like you shouldn't be allowed here." That was it. "For weeks, you've trespassed on my property," I said, my voice rising despite myself. "You've lied, threatened, fined, and humiliated me, and now you're breaking things and blaming me?" She laughed. "Prove it. You want proof?" I stepped forward. "You've been looking for a reaction. Congratulations, you got one." She pointed at the wall. $2,000. Structural damage, payable immediately. "That wall faces my land," I said. "You broke it." She leaned in, eyes cold. "You drove through it. I wasn't even here." "You don't get to decide," she shouted. "We do." The air around us felt tight, electric. Workers had stopped. Someone pulled out a phone. The HOA rep straightened her jacket like this was a performance. "Pay it," she said, "or we escalate." I stared at her. Every instinct told me to refuse, to fight it right there. But I saw what she wanted: anger, chaos, something she could use. So I did the opposite of what she expected. I paid the fine. I didn't apologize. I didn't explain. I didn't lower my eyes. I handed over the payment and said clearly, "This ends now." She smiled, but there was something uneasy behind it. "No," she replied. "Now it's official." As they walked away, I looked at the broken wall again. The damage was too clean, too deliberate, the angle wrong for a vehicle. That's when I understood. This wasn't enforcement. It was a setup. They weren't trying to make me follow rules anymore. They were trying to break me, provoke me into a mistake, push me until I reacted the way they wanted. I went inside, closed the door, and locked it. That night, I made a decision. If they were going to lie, I would record the truth. If they were going to plant evidence, I would catch them doing it. They wanted a reaction. What they were about to get was exposure. I didn't announce anything. I didn't warn them. I prepared. The cameras went up quietly, small, weatherproof, positioned where no one would think to look. One angled toward the roadside wall. Another watched the boundary markers they were so obsessed with. A third covered the stretch of land where they liked to gather before confronting me, as if rehearsing power gave it legitimacy. Days passed. Then, exactly as expected, they came back. The footage was clean, clear. unforgiving. The HOA truck rolled in slowly, stopping just short of the wall. Two figures stepped out. No measuring tools this time. No paperwork. One of them checked the road, looking both ways. Another pulled something heavy from the back metal, wrapped in cloth. They didn't hesitate. The camera caught the moment the first strike landed, stone cracking under deliberate force. Not an accident, not a vehicle. Repeated blows until the damage looked chaotic enough to blame on someone else. Then came the markers. Hands gripping posts, twisting, shifting them inches at a time, small enough to confuse, large enough to accuse. One of them paused, stepped back, and nodded like an artist satisfied with their work. Every angle recorded it. Date stamps, time codes, faces visible, logos on jackets, license plates in full frame. They stayed less than 10 minutes, long enough to commit multiple violations, short enough to think they were clever. When they left, the land was quiet again. Still, honest. I sat at the table that night, watching the footage without emotion. No anger, no shock, just confirmation. The kind that settles things permanently. They hadn't just crossed a line. They had documented themselves doing it. The evidence didn't shout. It didn't threaten. It didn't need to. It simply waited, and when the time came, it would speak louder than any accusation they had ever thrown at me. The courtroom was quiet in a way the land never had been. No shouting, no threats, no performance. Just wood, light, and the steady patience of a judge who had already read the file before anyone opened their mouth. The HOA arrived together, sitting stiffly, folders stacked like shields in front of them. I sat alone. Calm. The evidence sat between us, neatly organized, no drama required. When it was my turn, I didn't speak much. I didn't need to. The footage played on the screen, clear, time-stamped, undeniable. The wall. The markers. The deliberate damage. The quiet certainty of people who believed no one was watching. The judge leaned forward slightly. "These recordings," he asked, "were taken on your property?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And the individuals shown, are they representatives of the HOA?" A pause, then a reluctant yes. The judge turned toward them. "You claimed enforcement authority over this land. On what legal basis?" Their attorney stood, cleared his throat, and began explaining bylaws, maps, community standards. He spoke for several minutes before the judge raised a hand. "Let's simplify," the judge said. The room stilled. "This land was deeded in 1967. Your association was formed decades later. There is no transfer, no easement, no recorded authority granting you jurisdiction over this property." He looked directly at the HOA board. "You had no authority." Silence followed, thick, final. "You issued fines without jurisdiction," the judge continued. "You trespassed. You misrepresented your power to law enforcement. And finally, you intentionally caused property damage in order to fabricate violations." The words landed one by one, each heavier than the last. "This court finds the HOA liable." Penalties were listed clearly. All fines refunded, with interest. Civil penalties for harassment. Damages for property destruction. A formal injunction barring the HOA from entering or contacting me regarding the land. Mandatory reporting to the county for abuse of authority. Then the judge leaned back slightly and delivered the line that ended it. "You do not govern what you do not own." The gavel struck once. As the room emptied, the HOA members avoided eye contact. Their power, once so loud, had dissolved into paper and consequence. I stepped outside into the light, the same land waiting for me as it always had. Quiet, uncontrolled. Mine. The land felt different afterward. Not because anything had changed physically. The road was still there, the wall repaired, the wind moving the same way through the open space, but because the noise was gone, the tension, the sense of being watched. For the first time since I arrived, the silence I came for had finally returned. I stood alone near the boundary, coffee cooling in my hands, listening to nothing but distance. No engines, no raised voices, no footsteps that didn't belong. The quiet wasn't empty. It was earned. Every threat, every fine, every insult had tried to push me out, to make the land feel hostile. Instead, it had done the opposite. It reminded me why I chose this place, why it mattered enough to protect without shouting. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across ground that had outlasted them all. Decades before their rules, decades after their arrogance. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt settled. Some victories don't announce themselves. They don't need witnesses or applause. They arrive softly when the fight is over and nothing else needs proving. I took one last look across the land and let the silence do what it had always done best. It stayed,